Perfect. Okay, that's okay. That's okay. So, the essence of this session really is just to have you come again in contact with what supposedly you might have encountered before now, and have us discuss it. Because like I again see, this particular program is not a training per se. It is more like a revision, because you have 3 weeks of revision. The the theoretical aspect of the training for 3 weeks is largely around just helping you remember things, and then when necessary, we'll recommend you for this or for that. So, today's session is about agile and extreme agile. I'll be introducing you to something called extreme agile, which is agile in AI. Agile, we refer to as agile today, has shifted from the conventional agile mindset, and then it is now tending towards working 10 times faster. So if you imagine the sort of environment you. Yes, so you would hear my voice, but you might not hear your voice in the recording. Okay, but you hear. All right, so you hear everything I say, but of course, you get to see everything. Yeah. Okay. So the session today, like I mentioned, is strictly about just helping us remember things, coming in contact with, engagements we must have had before now about agile, and then again just discussing around it. Agile, what is extreme agile in practice. So we could rub minds, and like I mentioned, it's not a training session. It's because it's a senior level course that is based on interaction more than it is based on teaching, if you get what I mean, right? So, yeah. Now, I'll just walk you through what Agile is again, just in case you forgot about Agile. Just in case, I'll just breezily talk you through Agile. Agile is a methodology, and it's been in existence for close to for several decades now. Okay, it's been in existence since from the early 90s, from the early 60s, 1960s, and the likes. You would find instances or practices here and there in patches that describes what agile mindset today actually is about. However, over the years, especially during the early 2000s, looking at 2000s, early 2000s, 2001 specifically, a group of people, came together. We called about 19 of them. They are developers. They came together in the United States. Thankfully, you are in the United States. You will know they came together in the United States, somewhere in Utah, in a resort, ski resort in Utah. They came together. They decided to put together what we today know as Agile Manifesto. So, Agile Manifesto lays down the Agile values, lays down what you need to do in terms of the mindset, the values, the principles. It just provides the pillars for which or upon which Agile is standing. Now, so the Agile manifestos and principles, Scrum, of course, like is a framework under Agile. And during the course of this summit, they realized the different approach or the different angles that Agile could play. So we have different angles or different frameworks, like we call them today, where Agile can be practiced. So we have frameworks like Lean, Kanban, frameworks like Extreme Express. We have frameworks like the DFD. Um, we have a number of them. However, one framework that stood out of all the frameworks within Agile, notable frameworks, One of them that stood out is the Scrum framework. And this Scrum framework is, if in the world today, according to according to Macintosh, as at 2025, if in the world today, 100, for instance, if in the world today, 100 companies practice Agile, 70 of those companies practice Scrum by implication, because Scrum within Agile is the populous, looking at the most popular in terms of the usage of Agile practice. Scrum stands out. So 70% of the times Agile is practiced, it is Scrum that is being practiced. 70% of the time is supported by data. Okay, so Scrum by implication becomes for us a major focus. It becomes for us something you cannot do without, if I'll put it that way. You can't do without it, really, because if you think about it, Scrum gives its own flavor to the entire thing. And what is a framework? A framework is simply the laid down principles in terms of the step by step approach for delivering certain principles laid down in a methodology. So a methodology is a just think about a methodology as a general just think about a methodology as a general body of idea, and think about a framework as a specific step by step process for driving the general idea, for driving it and ensuring that value is achieved. Okay, so that's the simple way to put it. So we'll be talking about the Scrum framework. I'll be touching a bit on extreme agile. The agile introduced, just about a decade ago by a popular member of the agile, of the 19 team member that met to formulate the Agile Manifesto. One of them is called Jeff Sunderland. He is a proponent of extreme agile. So we'll talk about that a bit again, and then help you to drive. Meanwhile, tomorrow, you, like I mentioned, will be encountering CV session, where of course you would be exposed to CVs, the best practices around CVs, how to come up with your CV, and then you will be required to produce your own CV after the session, and after the entirety of the practical aspects of what you need to do to have a winning CV, especially now, in this particular period, especially now. Now, let's look at Agile Manifesto and the core principles. You rightly mentioned the four values and the 12 principles. These values gives Agile the identity it has today. Agile is about individuals and interaction over processes and tool. What this simply means, as one of the values, individual interaction over process and tool, what this simply is saying is Agile prioritizes people over tools and processes. Yes, you don't work in silos. Agile believes, let's talk it out. Let's address the issue. That's why you see in agile meetings or agile ceremonies, it's about engagement. In fact, Agile believe more in interactions, more in individuals than it believes in processes and tools. So, in an Agile environment, that's not to say you don't use processes, you don't use tools, but it's to say that Agile prioritizes human interactions, people. Let's talk, let's engage, let's have this sorted. Okay, let's talk it out. Very important. So Agile is big on individuals and interaction over what? Processes and tools. So that's very important, you note. Agile again believes in a working software over comprehensive documentation. What this is simply saying is Agile do not believe that we must figure everything out before we take action. No. Just like Waterfall. Imagine a Waterfall project where you can't proceed. Imagine you're building 50 50 floors of a skyscraper. Say you're building a very tall building of 50 floors, and then you decided to start building without having an architectural design, without having a soil test to know if the soil would carry such building. Imagine just going ahead to start building. That would be a terrible job you have done. In a waterfall environment, it would have been the best to first identify what you want to do. If you want to build 50 floors, fine. You identify a designer, you design. You first draw up a design, and this design will be vetted. You first identify the location where you need this to be situated. You conduct soil sampling, testing, and everything to be sure that such locations are suitable. You then begin with foundation. And by the time you're done with your foundation, you can then begin the building proper. And by the time you're done with the building proper, you can go the different linter levels until you go. So it's a sequential process that one cannot start until one ends. But Agile is not in that direction. Agile, and that's why it's mostly used in an IT environment, because Agile believes largely in following an iterative process, having to touch on everything at the same time as you build. So Agile believes in what we call sprints. Sprints in Agile, these are short period of 2 weeks, typically, that allows for certain work items to be delivered. Okay, so when we say working software over comprehensive documentation, while Waterfall would have gone through documentation, identifying what needs to happen first before they get into work, Agile just says identify what needs to be done now. 3 or 4 items. We want to build this website, for instance. We want to build this IT solution. What can we begin to use now, today? All right. Imagine your banking application. Your banking application today, the first 3 functionalities that are very important would include your ability to log into the banking application, your ability to send money out of this application into another account, your ability to receive money from another account into this application. These first 3 functionalities are very important. And the fourth one, which is a very nice to have, a good nice to have, would be your ability to view bank balances. Do you know that you can identify these 4 items and build it using Agile and come up with what we call MVP? Build this application, this mobile application, have these 4 functionalities, and every other thing can wait, because every other thing is not important for now. So long as we have a working software that allows a banking app to accommodate a user login, accommodate sending of money, accommodate receiving of money, accommodate viewing of balances, the user in the future, you could improve on this application in the future to include ability to download your bank statement, ability to chat with the customer, but that could be in the future. So Agile is saying, build what you know is of utmost importance now. Just identify the few, have them sorted, start using the application, and as you go, you can improve on it. That's what Agile is saying. Rather than waiting until we have documented all the different functionalities we need this application to perform, or we have documented about 20 long lists before we can start building. Agile is saying, no, don't wait to identify all the actions or all the functionalities. Get the minimum viable solution and get on it. Make it work. Let the software work. All right. I hope that's clear. Perfect. Then the third value is customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Agile is saying customers customers, when it comes to customers in Agile, Agile is big on customers, because if you don't collaborate with customers, how do you know how to build a solution that meets customers' need? Imagine me talking to you about a mobile application, a banking application, and you were a customer. And if I had not thought about what the customer would want this application to do for them, I would not be talking about customers' ability to log in, ability to view accounts, ability to send money, ability to view balance. I would not be talking about it if I had not had that customer experience, I wouldn't know what the customer wants a banking application for. So collaborating with customers gives you the insight as to what the customer would want immediately that we can turn into a working software. So collaborating with customers would help you receive customer feedback, will help you to drive value, help the customer to become better off by interacting with an agile solution, agile curated solution. So agile is big on customer collaboration. Agile is saying contract negotiations are good as much as all those back and forth around contracting and all is okay. But agile is saying first be sure that you are in tune with the customer. Every other negotiations can proceed. Okay. But customer collaboration is key. Very, very important. I think you also highlighted at some point responding to change. Change. So Agile is big on change. Agile is saying, let's respond to change over following a plan. So, which means if there are changing situations and you are in an Agile environment, let's drive towards the change because Agile believes that changing times brings about opportunity for improvement. Agile do not sit to be overtaken by technology, by time, and all. No, agile environment. That's why anytime they say you are working in an agile environment, it means that you're working in an environment that allows for adaptability, that allows for you to move fast, to catch up with the changing times, to become useful every time. Because how do you become useful every time? It means that you are always looking for what's happening currently and you are aligning with those things. So imagine building an application for a particular purpose, a banking application. And today we are talking about AI. Do you know what I would have done in the banking application I used as an example earlier? Today, if the same client approaches me to say, let's align with AI for this banking application you have just created, the MVP for, I would have said yes, it's a good idea. So all I would have done is to empower this banking application to have the opportunity for AI voice recognition for me to log in. So once I don't need to type in my username and password anymore for login. Once I speak to the AI app, once I speak to this banking application, hi, could you log me in? It recognizes my voice and it gets me into the application. And I ask again the AI, what's my balance? The AI would read my balance back to me. And I ask the AI, could you send money to, you know, Citibank, XYZ, sort code, da 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 da. And the AI would perform this function by itself for me. That's the power of AI. And these things I'm saying might sound interesting, but this is a solution. This is a project. So for such banking application I initially gave the MVP for us to integrate AI, of course, we then need to go into another sprint, identify what we want to improve, what the customers are looking for. Customers are now in line with AI. Okay, this is a feedback customers are giving. So how do we enhance this? We're asking customers, do you think you would want to be able to log in? Do you want to be able to log in without having to input values into a login functions? Yes, customers are saying they are happy about it. You are responding to change. This is the sort of responding to change you are talking about. So responding to change over following a plan is very big for Agile. Following a plan is simply to say, let's drive it like this. Let's follow these principles. Let's follow this plan, lay down plan. Agile has her plans. You must follow plans within Agile. However, what we are saying is let's respond to change more than we are following a plan because we have a plan, we have a sprint, we have a sprint goal, we have certain activities laid down to deliver the sprint goal, which is good, and we are following it. But once there are instances where changing times warrants for us to move, and the client is saying, this is where my business is going, this is how I want you to drive, you need to immediately as a team recalibrate and align with the changing times. That's what we are saying. All right. And there are a number of these principles. There are 12 of them. Again, like you rightly mentioned, customer satisfaction, which is very important. Welcoming changing requirements. This is simply saying once you are in a sprint, you can welcome changing requirements. So if you are in a sprint and then there are changing requirements, in fact, Agile is saying ensure the sprint ends. But there are instances where a sprint would have to be terminated for a new requirement to be put into a new sprint. But you can't run two sprints parallel, especially for one project. You need to be able to end one sprint has to be ended before another sprint can start because Agile believes in focus. So you need to have your team, your Agile team, focused on a sprint goal per time. So if there are changing needs or changing times, you can terminate the current sprint and bring in this new backlog items, like we call them. Backlog items are work items. You bring in these new backlog items or these work items into the sprint, and then you have your ceremonies. The Scrum Master will drive the entire process and have you sorted. Okay, you deliver working software frequently, which is very, very priceless. Just like we have highlighted about working software, and then business and developers collaborate. Of course, business people, the product owners are business people because they are the guys who understands the business direction. They are the guys who interact with the customers. They are the guys who interact with the clients. So they understand the business side. They know what the client wants to drive is revenue. They know what the customers want is satisfaction. They know what the developers want is to build. But how do we ensure that what the developer is building is in line with what the client wants, enough to drive revenue for the client, and is also in line with the customer's needs because you want to satisfy them. So it needs to be user friendly for you to satisfy the customer. It needs to be able to generate revenue for you to satisfy the client. So the product owners ensure that there's a relationship between the business and the developers. Developers' job is to build and write codes. Build projects around motivated people is the fifth principle, which is very. Yes, please. You have a question? Okay. No. What I said, or what I said was business and developers has to collaborate. They have to collaborate rather. So what I said now was the product owners are the business people in every agile environment. The product owner is one who interacts with the business, that's the client, is also one who interacts with the customers to understand what the customers want per time. Of course, customers have their needs they want to meet. They want to be able to be satisfied interacting with your solution. The business, on the other hand, they want to be able to meet their return on investment. They are investing money. So it is the pro owner who understands the business side of things. The developers, all the developers do is to drive development and implementation. However, it is also the job of the product owner to ensure that whatever the developer is building is in line with what the customers wants to see, is in line with what could satisfy the customer. Because if you as a developer build something that is not user friendly, the customer will not be happy about it. The customer will not be able to interact with the solution, and then the client will not be able to reap benefits or return on investment out of the solution. You see the tripartite relationship. So the product owner is one who drives the relationship between the business and then the developers. That's what I'm saying. So that developers and business collaboration stems from the perspective of product ownership. People who drive business and development collaboration. All Scrum Masters do in a project is to drive the implementation project and coordinate the meeting and the team. The Scrum Masters coordinate the teams, ensuring that they drive the project, ensuring that the project is within time, within cost, within budget, all right, and within scope. Ensuring as well that if the development team, for instance, have certain pain points, the Scrum Master is one who would bring up those pain points and share those pain points with the entire team for it to be removed. So it's very important we take note of those as well. All right, that is that clear? Great. I'm just giving you a bit of background and helping you as well. And by the way, I'll tell you, part of the reason I had earlier recommended for you to take the AFES Scrum Mastery Certification Program, that's the Scrum Mastery Certification Program, was because AFES, that's the Agile Foundation e-school, is in partnership with the International Scrum Institute that they are able to certify you for free so long as you're done with the training. I think, did I mention this to you? Uh, all right. So that was why but now that you are currently doing it with Udemy, it's fine. Like you have highlighted, it's okay. However, I would have wanted that engage the Agile e-school for that because you'll be certified with Scrum Mastery certificates from the from the International Scrum Institute, and you'll be required to write an exams, professional exams. By the time you're done with the training, you'll be required to write a professional exam for which you'll be certified at the end of the day. But that professional exams and everything already sits within it's a free because of the collaboration. So it sits within whatever if you opted for the course, it just sits there because it's an add-on. So that's a business conversation, the sales conversation. And the reason you've not, because the conversation I had, yes, yes, it's a major advantage, I'll tell you. So yes, so just look them up. Is International Scrum Institute is a very big, globally renowned, especially based in the US, institute. Scrum is certification body known worldwide. So it's a major. It's just a cap, and it just projects you as someone who drives agile because you can't. Of course, you need to go through an exams. So it's a certification body that ensures that you can't even pass through that process if you are not so if you're not a practitioner, if you've not shown practice or workings, in the area of agile. So actually is a major certification, really, if you ask me. But that's just by the way on the other side. So the sales team, because they told me that at the end of the day, after I take this course, they would have sent the information, the breakdown of the course and everything to you. But that would come after this particular agile course, because this course was meant to really be about interaction. But because I again know that you've not really, you do not really or you might have forgotten some things around this which I had recommended, and that's why I'm going a bit into detailing and telling you stuffs, but it would have just been an interactive session and then discussion, but I'm going a bit into just discussing and telling you more just to help you as well. But going forward, of course, you receive that mail, and then you can then be able to make your decision, if you're going forward with that or not. It's fine. So going forward would be about the fifth, which is build projects around motivated people. Agile is saying CEOs, agile mentors, agile big names. Make sure that if you're driving an organization, that your people are motivated. Agile believes much about motivating people because Agile believes that motivated people delivers excellence. Agile don't believe that if you're not motivated, you can bring in your best. Agile says if you're motivated, you will give your best. And that's why Agile is preaching motivation. Okay, so it's big. And that's why every Agile environment you find yourself, you just think about it. Why do practitioners, why do they pay them so much that they get to give their all? That's because they work in an agile environment, and then they are motivated. People driving those organizations or those projects, they know about this agile environment. They know about the motivation part, and it's very important. The sixth principle is about face-to-face communication, which drives the core essence of individual interaction. If you remember our first value, individual. So agile believes, let's talk, let's have this conversation. Now, there are three core pillars of agile. Okay, and then there are five of Agile Scrum, and there are five core values of Scrum. Now, one of the values of Scrum is about respect. So, face to face conversation in practice, Agile is saying, looking at practice now that Scrum preaches. I told you about what framework is about. Framework is the practicality aspect of things. Now, in practice, the values for Scrum is saying respect. So once we're having our face-to-face communication, and because Agile prioritizes individual and interaction, Agile is not saying disrespect me or talk down on me or talk over me. Agile is saying, let's talk. Let's be respectful. Let's have a productive conversation in essence. So Agile is big on respect. Agile is big on let's have this conversation. Let it be productive. Let's look out for one another really in the actual sense of it. All right? Very, very important. So Agile is big on respect. And that's why it prioritizes face to face communication. So, working software as progress. I think I had given you an example of a working software where I highlighted the example of a bank and I gave you the reason why Agile is often looking at working software. Agile just believes let's not focus on everything. Let's think about the first five things that would make this project work. Imagine a banking application without those four criteria I mentioned earlier. Imagine a banking application that you cannot log in into and you cannot view your bank account balance and you cannot send money out and you cannot receive money. That's not a banking app. But these are not the only features a banking application offers. There are other features that could be suspended for now because those could come in later. So Agile is saying identify what could come in now, get it sorted. Let's not wait until we figure everything out. No, let's identify the critical aspect of things and let's have it sorted and now. Let's not wait. Agile do not believe that we must figure everything before we get it done. No, Agile is not like that. So that's the mindset you must have. Sustainable development space, Agile believes in sprints, like I mentioned. So it's an iterative period. So that's why a sprint is typically in certain rhythms. So for organizations that are working with 2 weeks sprint, 2 weeks is a duration, like typical duration of a sprint. And remember, I said a sprint is a number, the period in time within which certain work items are delivered, right? So if it's a 2 week sprint you have started with, you must maintain that tempo. It needs to be sustained. So after this 2 week sprint, we go into another sprint is a 2 week sprint. And what happens during the course of a sprint? You begin with a sprint planning meeting. Then after 24 hours, you kick off with daily stand-up meeting. At the end of the sprint, you are having your sprint demo. At the end of that, you have what we call sprint retrospective. At the end of that, you are going back into another sprint planning. You repeat the same cycle. So at the end of the day, you are working sustainably at the same pace towards delivering value to the client, to the business. Remember, to the client, who is the business person, and to the customer, because that's the focus of the entire conversation. So, continuous attention to excellence, which is, of course, not possible if you don't build, software around. If you don't build the environment around motivated people, you would not find instances for excellence. So Agile believes build projects around motivated people, excellence will be the output. Then simplicity is essential, self-organizing team, regular reflection and adaptation. Regular reflection and adaptation is simply what I've just highlighted earlier about retrospective meetings. So those regular reflections, those retrospective meetings, it just helps you to reflect. What did I do well? What did I not do well? How can I improve upon it? So we just keep in that direction. And then, of course, going forward, we are able to drive. Okay, very important. Now, let's move to some of the roles, the artifacts, the ceremonies. But before I go there, do you have any other question for now? Okay, fine. It's clear, everything, right? Great. So, this is a summary of Agile when it comes to the roles, the artifacts, the ceremonies. So Agile has core roles. There are three of them. The product owner, I mentioned it earlier. So the product owner, what do? They manage backlog items. They prioritize them and they liaise with stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? The people who are directly or indirectly involved in the project. So what sort of backlog do they manage? What sort of work item? They manage what we call product backlog. Product backlog is different from sprint backlog, but these are some of the conversations that in-depthly, by the time you go into a lot of those detailing, you get to understand. Yeah, perfect. Sprint backlog, perfect, perfect. Perfect. That's the idea. So you draw product backlog, you have your grooming session, you draw your product backlog, you push them into sprint backlog, and sprint backlogs are managed by Scrum Masters. Product backlogs are managed by product managers, product owners. You said? Of course, continuous refinement to align with the changing requirements, to align with the changing needs of the customers, of the business. These are the changing needs that we're talking of. You see, that's why we say accept changing needs, because the customers will always have feedback. Business will always have their business direction. So as a product owner, you are consistently refining and adopting and continually engaging your Scrum team to continuously refine what you have gathered into sprints backlogs and into sprint goals, and you are delivering. So it's a continuous process of refinement, picking, hearing from the clients, hearing from the customers, bringing it into the circle, having those refinement sessions, going to those planning sessions where you transform the product backlogs into sprint backlogs. You estimate them, using the different estimation techniques. For instance, the one I love to use is the Fibonacci sequencing. You do all those and then you go into the sprint proper, right? So we have the product owners, the scrum masters, development team. Development team are basically the guys develop, the guys that do the actual work of building solutions, that write codes. And these days, there's something called vibe coding. So a lot of development guys are now going into more professional roles, more very specific and professional roles, because AI again is beginning to take up some of the chunk of the activities they perform, which means those who know how to then work with AI are the guys driving in this sense. But Scrum Masters are always very important because they are the actual guys that listen to you, that see your pain, that know what you're working on, that know what you are failing at, where you are going wrong. They are the guys that speak to you and listen to you. If you're struggling with anything as a project team member, it's a Scrum Master that picks up those things and help you to remove them. Speak to the business owners if possible, speak to the product owners if possible. Just yes, help you escalate those issues and help you to remove them. All right. So the Scrum Masters are very important because they are like the eyes of the team. They are the servant leaders, as we call them. So they help you remove impediments, they facilitate the ceremonies. All the ceremonies, the Scrum Master set up the meetings, they ensure they are the ones to facilitate. They coach the team as well. How do they coach the team? They coach the team on Scrum related activities, because remember, this is a cross functional team that within this team we have professionals in data management, professionals in product ownership, professionals in different things, in different walks of life, software testers, automated testers, different data analysts, a whole lot. But this coaching is about Scrum. It is the Scrum Master that is referred to as the custodian of the Scrum practice within a Scrum team. So if the team, for instance, do not know that a typical Scrum daily stand-up should not exceed 15 minutes, it is a job of the Scrum Master to coach the team to say, guys, we need to keep up with the Scrum standards. This is the time allocated for a daily stand-up. It is 15 minutes. So that sort of coaching is what we are talking about, not necessarily professional coaching in the depth of it around where they do not have skills or specialty in. No, we're saying the coaching around Scrum practice. It is that sort of coaching that we're talking of. So we have artifacts. Yes. Good. So the question you're asking is if the people now need additional training to upskill to ensure that they are very relevant in their roles and all you need to do is to engage the Scrum Master. These are some of the pain points we're referring to. All you need to do is escalate to the Scrum Master. Scrum Master will then know the right channel to escalate to. And if the need be that the organization would even opt for maybe certain certification, because organizations do it, that they identify the need to take certain, certain staff into certain trainings to help them even upskill and become even more competent in the nature of the work they are doing per time. Yes, it is a scrum master you speak to about it. Open up, about your training needs, about your concerns, about anything, and then the scrum master is the one to drive your pain point up above, escalate them to the right authorities that will help you to drive, those sort of that remove those sort of pain points. So yes, the scrum master is the right person to engage for such sort of engagement. Now, scrum artifacts, there are three core artifacts: the backlog, the product backlog, the sprint backlog, and then the increment. Increments are basically working product. So we don't call anything increment if they had not crossed what we call definition of done in the world of Scrum. Yes, they must have crossed what we call definition of done. So, product backlog, you move items, work items from product backlog, move them to sprint backlog. And once you move them into sprint backlog, you go into sprints proper. And once you're in the sprints, you then go through the sprint ceremonies from the beginning to the end of it, the different ceremonies from the sprint planning, the daily stand-ups, the sprint review meetings, and then the retrospective meetings. That circle, you go through all those circles, and then by the time you're done with that circle, you then ask yourself, have we met? Usually, it is the product owner that confirms that this particular sprint is, yes. How many do you know? Can you mention them? Okay, I keep mentioning the sequencing. It is first, the ceremonies are sprint planning meeting, daily stand up meeting, then sprint review meetings or demo meetings, then you have your retrospective meetings. Those are that's the cycle. Usually those retrospective meetings, we just have our our review meeting, and we kick off with retrospective meetings. So sometimes they are just lumped up together in one session. We just no daily. Yeah, sprint review meetings. Sprint review meetings, yes, is a ceremony of its own, like I mentioned, but in most instances, you find that it is practiced, and immediately you have your review, you can go into retrospective. It's not an issue. But what I'm saying is, your sprint review sessions or the demo session, there is no specific number of people that is typical. No, you can invite the world. You can invite anybody in this life. You can decide to invite just yourself, your project team, but at least ensure you invite critical stakeholders, people who have the say, who can confirm that what you have delivered is in line. For instance, the product owner, someone who represents the client and the business in every meeting, product owner. They are the ones to tell you that this sprint goal has been met. This sprint goal has not been met. Let's recalibrate. The it is the approval of a product owner that allows for a sprint demo to be signed off, so that you can then say you are now the backlog item you deliver through that particular sprint has now moved into what we call increment. For it to move into increment, it needs to pass that gate, and the gatekeeper is the product owner, because the product owner understands what the client wants, understands what the user wants. So it is again, when you have maybe the product owner, you also have the users, you have the client in the call, maybe the demo session, and the client is saying, "Oh, this is what I want. It's you need to make this tweak. You need to make." You can also take feedback from the client directly. But in the instances where the client is not available, it is the product owner who is the gatekeeper that gives that final decision for it to cross that gate. Very important. So that's why we then call it increment. Increment is now a working product that is shippable, that you can then launch, you can then take it to the market and it becomes a solution. All right. So the scrum ceremonies, like I mentioned, the planning, the daily stand-ups, the demo sessions or the review sessions and the retrospective meetings. Yeah, yeah, retrospective, yeah. Those are the ceremonies. Good. Now the sprint is just a duration in time. Ceremonies happen during the course of a sprint. Just to put that out there. Ceremonies happen during the course of the sprint. Yes. Yes. Um, so in the proper context, you could call it scrum ceremonies or sprint ceremonies. It's not outside of required. Actually, what it is called, actually, according to the Scrum framework, is Scrum ceremonies because it is the framework that has the ceremonies. But these ceremonies happen within the sprint. So you can also call them sprint ceremonies. That's the logic. Yeah, great. So this is just okay. Do you have any other question? Oh, great. So this is just to also talk us through the agile waterfall, when to use each. The funny thing is when you are in the construction or in any environment that requires linear or sequential phases, and that's when you begin to talk about waterfall. But when you are in an environment that is changing fast, that requires an iterative, incremental delivery approach, that's when you begin to talk about agile. So that's why agile, yeah, speak on. Yes, yes. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Has changed. Yeah. Meet up with a changing time. Yes. So this is a very fantastic example. Tesla going back, considering the fact that the EV vehicle they were about to develop, already a different company had gone ahead of them. So they need to recalibrate. They need to take up that challenge and go back into the works, engage customers more, pick up more feedback from customers, and then develop something outstanding. That's what we're saying. So agile is moving fast. Agile is moving fast, and it works mostly in an IT environment, and that's why most environments that we practice agile is an IT environment because think about it, IT solutions, a lot of changing things, changing times. we've experienced a lot of changing times, especially as we have it today. AI is doing a whole lot of things, disrupting the market, disrupting the entire phase of human existence. So a whole lot is happening, and that's why it's important for us to note that agile is that one methodology that is also being practiced, especially is most relevant within the AI era. Very, very important to note that. Yeah, great. So sprint planning meetings, 2 to 4 hours, retrospective meetings, 1 hour, 30 minutes is okay. This is just some of the comments I highlighted to help you understand some of the activities that happen for the agenda for a sprint planning meeting. We look at the product backlog, we discuss the business priorities, we estimate the effort, we commit to sprint goal, we break down user stories, we assign tasks. The output is, of course, we have a sprint goal statement, we have a sprint backlog, we have a team commitment, we have the capacity planning. Because of the effort estimation, we already know what everybody is expected to do per time. All right, great. So, of course, in those sort of agile scrum sessions, in the formal training, that's where you'll be even introduced into estimation techniques, how to go about estimating, and all those things are in depth. That, of course, subsequent sessions could assist you in that sort of training dedicated to agile. Of course, it's fine. Of course, certification is very very critical. What they want, yes, very critical. So the retrospective meeting, the format would be what went well, what didn't go well, what will you improve, da 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 da. The key practices, safe environment, focus on process, not people, action. Of course, action items for next. So now you hear something, focus on process, not people. Why are you focusing on process, not people here? It is because, yes, good, beautiful. So as you're looking back, you have just rightly mentioned, don't blame people. As you're looking back on what transpired during the course of the last sprint, you don't begin to blame people for things. No, let's look at what did not work out well. Let's look at the processes or the things that we did that did not work and how we could make it work in the subsequent sprints. Let's also look at the things that worked that we can replicate going forward. Let's also look at the things that we did not factor in, we did not plan on doing them. In fact, we then found a need to doing them, but because it was late, we couldn't do them in the last sprint. But now, because we have identified that some things were missing, let's bring them into the fall. And that's the mindset. So having those retrospective meetings and not blaming people, let's not blame people. Let's focus on the process. Let's drive the process and ensure that whatever we're doing in subsequent sprints becomes even better. So we look at action items for next sprint, rotational facilitation. So all these things, very, very important. Rotating facilitators here is simply saying, while it is true that the Scrum Master is the facilitator of every Scrum ceremonies, the Scrum Master could decide to say, during the course of the meeting, could decide to call on Mr. A to give an update, to be the one to speak as to what went well, what they feel did not go well, what they feel. Mr. A could now be co-facilitating with the Scrum Master, sharing their perspective as well. So the entire team could talk, but someone could then drive the conversation. The next time, it could then be Mr. B or Miss B driving that conversation, speaking from there. So it's a collaborative thing. But at the end of the day, the most important is that what is the outcome? Let's understand that the outcome of a retrospective is for process improvement to ensure that if we must have overworked or underworked a team, we identify it. That's what we call velocity insight. Velocity insight is the ability to identify when you have overworked or when you have underworked a team. All right. So identifying the velocity is very critical because you then know how much workload to transfer into the next sprint on this particular team you are dealing with. Very, very important. We'll have the morale assessment, also very important. So the extreme agile conversation, I'll tell you now, in just about 10 to just some past decade, Jeff Sunderland started a movement. It's called Extreme Agile. So the mindset is we've been practicing Agile. We've been having 15-minute stand ups, for instance, in an example, 15-minute stand up meeting that should not exceed 15 minutes. But Jeff Sunderland is saying that one, remember that this 15-minute stand up, we are not meant to discuss problems. We're just meant to talk about, just mention the problem. We're not meant to discuss it. That's to start with, which is the typical Scrum daily stand up Agile standard. We don't discuss problems during the stand up meeting. We just mentioned it. Oh, I encountered this issue yesterday. I encountered that issue yesterday. The Scrum Master takes note of these issues you have just mentioned. And he could have, or she could have a follow up call with you later to addressing those issues. But you don't discuss the issue in the meeting. Otherwise, you begin to find that this meeting would take a whole lot of time. But Jeff Sunderland is saying that while wait for the daily stand-up meeting to provide an update of issues, Jeff Sunderland is saying if we have a tool for reporting issues and you encounter any issue on the go, we should immediately drop the issue. We should not wait until 24 hours to discuss or to talk about issues or to highlight them in that context, not discussing them, to highlight them. We should not wait to highlight them. We should immediately use the mechanism in place to drop these issues so that our daily stand up meetings can now be more focused on solutions, how we have how we have closed out on issues, or if there's any issue opening, or if there's any open issue, we just highlight them in those meetings. So you see that if initially you are reporting 10 issues in a daily stand-up meeting, because of this mechanism, you'll find that you're only report having to talk about maybe one or two issues. Just highlight them because now 8 of the issues might have been reported earlier. You might have used the channel available to you to escalate them. And that channel escalation would be faster. So Jeff Sutherland is saying revamping the approach of sprints, revamping the approach of agile, especially leveraging on AI. And how do you report? How do you set up a tool for reporting instantly what issue is currently happening? That's where automation comes in, AI automation tools. Do you know that today there are tools or automation tools that monitor what is going on? For instance, I am writing code, I'm a developer. I am writing a particular code for a particular project and I ran into a problem and I'm trying to solve it and I'm asking AI how to solve this problem. But the AI I'm asking on how to solve this problem is providing me response but providing a feedback to the Scrum Master that Miss A or Mr. B encountered an issue, but I'm working with Mr. A to solve the issue. However, this is for your information. So AI can be prompting and notifying other people, like the Scrum Master, of your issue in real time because of the automation system in place while you are currently being guided by the same AI to solve the problem. So you see how teams can become even 10 times efficient. So that already Scrum Master has the information before the Scrum daily stand-up meeting. You already have an information that you had an issue. All right. So that during the course of stand-up meeting, Scrum Master will be focused on, oh, I noted that you had an issue. Has it been resolved? Or do you still require an assistance to resolving this? You are on that note better off and 10 times faster in driving the entire process. So I just gave you an example to help you understand the mindset behind Jeff Sunderland's approach for extreme agile. So it's currently what is making the wave, and it's very, very important that at least these conversations begin to come into the conversation that you should listen to. Very, very important. So focus on value, not tasks. So Extreme Agile is saying deliver measurable business outcome, not just completed activities. Let's be able to measure outcomes. Let's be able to continuously ship, you know, smaller cycles, using smaller and faster delivery cycles instead of having to wait through to the different delivery cycles of a typical agile. Let's even deliver smaller and faster within smaller and faster cycles. Let's even deliver value. That's the mindset behind extreme agile. So real time transparency, real time. Remember the example I gave you. Real time transparency, escalation in real time, using AI tools, automation tools to receive real time updates, to receive real time feedback, to receive real time. This does not happen in the conventional agile. What happens in a conventional agile scrum environment is that you wait until the next day when providing your updates during the course of the stand up meeting. You then tell the scrum master or the team that, oh, you encountered a blocker yesterday, you couldn't proceed. Imagine you encountered that blocker at 12 p.m. yesterday, and then you couldn't do anything between 12 p.m. and 4 p.m., and nobody is aware of it, only for you to come by 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. today to tell me that you encountered a challenge 12 p.m. yesterday and you couldn't drive. Do you think that that team is a productive team? No. The team in this current dispensation is not a productive team, especially when AI is available. As you are encountering the problem, you are supposed to be working with AI to resolving the problem. If it's a technical problem, if it's not a technical problem, you are supposed to have a pipeline for reporting such issues immediately. Immediately, automated system that gives the entire team that needs to know about this issue information, and that helps you to track and monitor where the resolution or SLAs, looking at if, for instance, the issue requires 3 approvals, and then you are immediately sent this issue across for feedback. You would see in real time where the approval is at. Oh, it has crossed the finance had signed off. The Scrum Master is currently dealing with this. You will see in real time. So putting up automation tools, helping real time transparency is what Extreme Agile is preaching. Self management team, empowered self management team. Now, initially is about motivated team, right? And motivation could be in different dimensions. It could be, just think about motivation from different perspective. But in this case, we're talking about empowered self-managing team. Agile already believes in self-management. That ownership of tasks. Agile believes in organizing. Agile is self-organizing. It believes that agile people would be agile, would not be chased up to do their jobs. It believes that people who are agile would deliver without having to be told to deliver to start with. Now, imagine empowering those sort of people, giving them power in terms of, imagine in a team, in the team, imagine subscribing for your team, subscribing for them like a premium usage of certain AI tools. You have empowered them. You have not just motivated them to work, you have empowered them because now they are able to ask and they are able to access the best form of assistance, especially from AI. So imagine a team that receives the best form of assistance from AI through the subscription of AI, of a particular AI module for them that helps their job. How would they not be 10 times faster? So, empowering your team is again very important. So, agile in summary, extreme agile in this sense, is saying twice the work in half the time. That's the summary of extreme agile. So, extreme agile is saying let's get the job done, twice the job, let's get it done in half the time. So, now, to the meat of the matter, communicating agile experience, which is one of the core aspects of today's session, especially as it relates to you, communicating agile experience. Now, when in an interview or when communicating with a team, of hire, you do not just communicate your agile skill or experience as though you are living in practical agile. You need to be able to describe your experience in agile. You need to be able to tell me, if I were to be the hire, about a sprint that did not go well. You need to be able to tell me how you handled those changing requirements. For instance, a client had approached the product owner to say, this is where the business is going now. We need to terminate the current sprint and we need to open up another sprint. We need to go into a different sprint immediately to be able to catch up with the changing times. You need to be able to tell me how you, as a scrum master or as a project manager, were able to convince your team. Imagine you have a team you're managing, team of 7 people, because agile is plus or minus 7. Agile team, a typical agile scrum team should not exceed 7 plus or minus 9 people. Imagine having 7 or 9 people in a team, and then, or 5 people in a team, and then a product owner is telling you that we need to recalibrate, and these guys are in the middle of work. The motivation and their focus is on this work, and you are having to tell them, well, we are changing the course of things, and then all you have done is no longer relevant. Let's go back to the basics. Imagine the feeling. Imagine someone who has been focused, who has been dedicated, and they are doing their job. And you just come to tell them that, well, what they are currently doing is not working. You need to have the skill of managing them enough to be able to tell them in a way that will not offend them, in a way that will not diminish their motivation, in a way that will not make them feel less. Because there's a very thin line between motivation and demoralization. So if you demoralize them, they would not be motivated to deliver even more for you and more value. So for you to be able to do that, it requires a whole lot. So you will tell me how you are able to do those things. And that's what I want to know as your agile experience. I don't want to just hear that, oh, there are 4 values, agile values. Anybody can know that. But I want to know, how were you able to drive these values in an environment? Tell me how you were able to drive individual interaction. Give me instances where you prioritize individual interaction over tools and processes. How were you able to drive stakeholder conversations, especially when it's conflicting, when you have conflicting stakeholders in your team? How were you able to drive such projects as a scrum master? These are the conversations I want to know. How were you able to measure your team performance? That these are conversations around velocity, around the use of estimation techniques, how you were able to identify in your last project, how you were able to identify that the velocity of this team is 38.2, that you are now able to utilize that mark to ensure that going forward, you maintain that average over 10 sprints. Then how are you able to communicate that you had arrived at a velocity of 38 point something if you do not even know the calculations of velocity or what velocity in itself is about? So you see, during your conversations with potential hires, we want to know really how you have practicalized what you know, how you drive agile as a project or a process, how you drive agile in a project as a methodology, or how you imbibe the mindsets of agile in driving a project. Yes. Okay. Those are the things we want to know. How do you estimate user stories? So how do you estimate user stories? How do you know that this user story can be delivered within XYZ time? So what are the estimation techniques? We have the different estimation techniques. So how do you go about doing them? Those are the conversations we want to know. Then those are interview questions, sort of conversation. Remember, all these things I've been talking about, describing your experience, tell me about a sprint that went wrong. How do you handle changing? Those are interview questions that you must prep yourself on. Okay, of course, in the nearest future, we'll be having some interview dedicated sessions, where some of these things will be, we'll be bringing some of these things, these conversations, and then having to talk about them in depthly. All right, but begin to think about how to communicate your agile experience. Think about it from the perspective of more of what you have done with Agile than what you know about Agile. Just think about it from that perspective and begin to, just internalize these conversations as we go ahead. Okay. Now, communicating best practices. Some of the best practices, especially when you find yourself in an interview, is to think about teamship and collaboration in in agile. The best practice would be around show of teamwork and collaboration. Agile believes in a team, a cross-functional team. Agile do not just believe in a team, it believes in a cross-functional team. So it's very critical you note that Agile is big on cross-functional teams. Use of star methods. I think I had highlighted the star technique one time. I had given an example of the situation, task, action, result. These are some of the these are some of the approach for responding to what we call behavioral questions, or questions that seek to inspect into what you have done before now. Anytime you hear any question that seeks to go back into time and check you to know what you have done before now, those sort of questions are best responded to by the STAR approach. When you create a scenario talking about a past scenario, where you talk about the task that you were expected to carry out that possibly did not go well, and then you talk about the action you took when you noticed it did not go well. What action did you take? Then, when you took the action, what was the result? Did you achieve at the end of the day the result you had wanted to? Which means your action was positive, or did your action turn out to be negative? We want to know. So if you drive the star approach and you're able to create a storyline, tell a story about your experience using the star approach, that gives you an edge in every interview. So, highlight of adaptability and flexibility in an agile interview. It is important to mention the adaptability nature of agile, the fact that agile is embracing of change. If you talk about how agile embraces change, not just changing requirements, but also change when it comes to things that you had done that you should not do again. You embrace the change of not doing it again, which means adaptability from also the retrospective perspective, the retrospective meetings you have, oh, identifying what you did not do well, how you could improve upon it, identify those, and you adapt to that change. You change to align with the new reality of dumping certain things that do not work and then embracing certain things that works, or embracing certain things that you did not factor in before, but now you are introducing them into the fray. So, highlighting adaptability and flexibility when having conversations or communicating your experience is very important. Demonstrating your problem solving abilities is also as critical as talking about agile from the perspective of the use of the star approach. Very, very important. Use of specific metrics and outcome. You see how I've been talking about metrics, talking about velocity, I've been talking about Fibonacci sequencing, I've been talking about mechano approach and all. Those are some of the metric for driving estimation, work estimation. There are other metric like the burn up chart, the burn down chart, for driving what work item is left and what work item is has been worked on. So these burn down chart, burn up chart, these are some of the metric that drive agile approach that you need to mention to be able to convince whoever you are engaging that yes, really you have this experience, and you also, of course, you do not just have it as a theoretical experience, you have it in terms of a practical experience to show. So you show your customer focus. Of course, you must make sure that anytime you're having, you're communicating your experience, that you drive the conversation in the direction of giving credence to customers. Customers are king. Very, very important. You talk about how it is that customers drive the process. Customers are very critical in any agile environment. Customers are very critical Very, very critical that you cannot, do without, because it is from customer feedback that you are able to drive a solution that meets the customer's need. And in doing meeting the customer's need, of course, you are meeting the business need. Profitability is guaranteed. If you meet customers' need, the business profitability is, as good as guaranteed. So you also discuss continuous improvement. Of course, agile environment is an environment that encourages continuous improvement. So continuous improvement, changing changing requirements, continuously improving, by adapting or your retrospective meeting and having to identify what did not work, and then you are continuously improving upon those things. Of course, very, very important. And be honest about challenges. Be honest about your challenges and show enthusiasm for Agile. Show your love for Agile. Show your love for Agile. So when we say be enthusiastic about Agile, even project yourself as someone having not just an agile experience, but someone who is now a lover of extreme agile, which is twice the work, half the time. No organization would look out or look away when you are projecting yourself as someone who has come to a point where you are at the extreme because you appreciate and you are working now well with AI enough to drive productivity twice as more or even 10 times as more, in terms of 10 times more in terms of your delivery. Okay, very, very important. Now, what I'll need you to do, as a take home for this particular session, would be to just come up with a one page document in your own words. In your own words, just talk about anything you know about Agile, the principles, the ceremonies, the best practices, just a like a reference guide. Put just a one-page document, okay? Just a one-page document. Now, again, what you do for me, yes, is have like another one page for vocabularies like terminologies. All the terminologies you know in Agile should come in the second page. All the terminologies, vocabularies, anything at all in terms of the terminologies, the use of words, any definition, just put them in one page as well. Okay. So that from there you can begin to appreciate and speak, because you can't be talking about communicating your experience in Agile without communicating Agile terminologies and Agile in itself. So you need to know how to communicate your experience in an agile way. So that when you're talking about agile, you see how I've been engaging you, I've been saying things, I've been drawing references, and I've been pointing areas or aspects from agile. I'm speaking agile because I know agile and I've practiced agile. So I'm speaking it. That's the mindset, that's the idea. Okay. So the aspect of simulation. Okay, it'll be nice for you to create for yourself. Just do a simulation by yourself. Think about how just it's a by yourself assessment. The two assessments I want you to share with the team would be the summary, one page summarizing agile, everything you know about agile, and then the other page is summary of the terminologies and the use of definitions and all. The third one is like a simulation, is a take home assignment for yourself. All you need to do is just to help you be in that mood. Plan a sprint for yourself. Think about a project, any project at all. Think about any project at all, and then think about what you can do for that. Like, who is the client? So I'll give an instance. Say, for instance, a particular bank, XYZ bank, approaches me and they want me to help them. I'm a Scrum Master in a team, and they have approached my team. The product owner, of course, had invited me to this call, and then what the bank wants to achieve is they notice that their customer care services or customer services have not been up and doing. A lot of complaints. A lot of people are leaving the bank. A lot of people are closing their accounts, and I want to know why, because I do not have any customer complaint portal where I receive feedback from customers enough to even know what the customers are thinking and why they are leaving the bank. So think about you being approached by the bank CEO to think of a solution for them that will help them to know what the customers are saying, so that they are better able to serve the customers and improve on their services where need be, to be able to retain even the remaining customers and even more, to see if they can go out from those customers that are leaving them, if they can stop that tide. Okay, just think of something, then think of what they must have told the product owner, that is the long list of the things they want for that particular application in terms of features. Then think of what the product owner and the Scrum team would have discussed to arrive at specific functionalities or features. Just think about these things. That will put you in this headspace of how it is done. If you think about them, feel free in the next class, if I'll be the one taking it, you can feel free for us to discuss that. Okay? That particular one, you can feel free for us to discuss it. So if there are areas where you did not um, where there are certain things you did not get correctly, of course we can think about them, and then I will help you, give you some guidance to help you to drive in that direction. All right, so I would expect those. I think that will be the end of the session for now. So let's go to questions. Let's take questions. Let's hear from you, feedback.